That's nobody.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be jazz. Akwachi, daily osinachi, namnukwa osinachi. One man osinachi mo, akwachi, daily osinachi, mama osinachi.
Hi, David. Hi, David.
Hello, good afternoon indeed.
Yeah,
Greetings.
David, how are you?
Good afternoon.
Sorry, I see that the links are personalized. So some of you are now also called Chair and Organizer David Eard. But that's not a problem, I think, but it's funny.
Can you hear me?
Should we give people maybe 2 minutes?
Yeah.
To see if anybody else shows up? All right, thank you. From the LSA chair who's here. Thank you very much for hosting us. Everyone, I think it'll be a workshop between us, but who knows, maybe people will join us later or they can maybe watch the video. In any case, it's very nice to see you here again. And I'm looking forward to us talking about our research into chiefs and traditional leaders and security and conflict resolution in Nigeria. We have Dr. Funmilayo Agbaje here, right? Yes, hello.
Good afternoon. I'm here.
Good afternoon. We have Dr. Ayodele Shitu here, I think.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, excellent. We have Dr. Garba also here, is that right?
Yes. Good afternoon. Can you hear me, David?
Absolutely, yes. Yes.
Excellent.
And then last but not
Yes.
least, Dr. Oludayo Tade is here also. I hope. I saw him just now. Dr. Tade, are you here?
Yeah, David, I'm
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, I can hear you. Excellent. All right, welcome. Thank you. Shall we begin? Indeed, with Dr. Tade, because you have to leave in 25 minutes or so. You have your own PowerPoint, or should I share something for you?
Let me see if I can share from here. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think everyone can see it. So
Absolutely.
I should go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, please go ahead. 15 minutes, as we said. Please go ahead. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. The title of my paper is How Can an Oba Be Kidnapped Like Chicken? Traditional Institutions in the Operation of Western Nigerian Security Network, codenamed Amotekun. Obas, traditional rulers or monarchs, held position as chief security officers of their communities with fortified security architecture during the pre-colonial period. But this could not be said of post-colonial reality area where traditional rulers have been brought under the control of local government authorities with limited or no constitutional functions. So these constitutional limitations have exposed them also to be victims of murder and kidnapping, particularly the one which escalated in the year 2019. What this paper therefore interrogates is the place of traditional rulers in the operationalization of Amotekun. Amotekun is the Western Nigerian Security Network, which was established following insecurity and incursion into the southwestern part of the country in the year 2019. Of Amotekun security networks in, of course, in southwestern Nigeria was aimed at fighting violent crimes generally, and of course, existing studies, of course, have examined the contributions of hunters, deities, monarchs, and of what I get in this paper. We have some work as a self-help initiative, but this on how
Oh, I think Dr. Tade got cut off.
Wow, what happened?
Yeah, I think his internet may have disappeared.
Yeah,
Let's see if he comes back.
yeah. The internet has been horrible in some places.
Has it? Yeah.
I said the internet connectivity has been horrible these days in some places.
Yeah,
I'm sure he will be reconnected now.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Hello?
Oh,
Hello?
hello?
Wow. Yeah, okay. Can I go ahead?
Yeah, please. Yes, absolutely. Welcome back.
Oh, okay. So on the research question, so the study interrogated how the place of Yoruba traditional rulers in the operationalization of Amotekun and how the inclusion or exclusion of them have shaped their impact in the management of regional security, in building peace and security within their respective domains, particularly in the Southwest region. The methods exploratory design was used, sampling techniques were purposive, network, and convenience sampling. The study areas are 3 purposively chosen, Ondo, Osun, and Oyo states. And participants included 4 traditional rulers who are on the board of Amotekun in Oyo, Osun, and then Ondo states. And then, of course, we have Odua People's Congress heads, Agbekoya hunters, those who are members of Amotekun, who constitute Amotekun as presently constituted. We used KII, IDI, and they also backed that up with secondary data, particularly on particularly those who are particularly those reports which are focused on activities of Amotekun and how they are founded. So one of the essential things that we found going into the research question was the factors which precipitated the setting up, which was the rising insecurity within the zone, particularly about migrant criminals, which were conceptualized as moving from certain parts of the country, particularly the northern part, terrorists. And then, of course, there were issues about farmer header conflicts and then compromise of the security of the zone. The second factor, which we found, was the threat to the political legitimacy of Southwest governors, because the citizens were, of course, crying about the inability or the incapacity of the governors in ensuring security of the zone. But more fundamentally, for the Dawn Commission, which is the development agenda for Western Nigeria, which is the commission which, of course, facilitated the setting up or the meeting leading to the setting up of Amotekun security network. What was important to set to the founding of the Amotekun was the security threat which affect the economy of the region. That was the reason behind the security summit, which gave birth to Amotekun. One of the, of course, who had said something about the need to begin to deploy all within their arsenal, particularly using traditional approach to security, was the Alara of Aramoko Ekiti. Of course, before 2020, about 4 traditional rulers had been, and so they also considered that as a desecration of and so the need for them to resort to the use of traditional mechanisms of social control. So from there, we found also that traditional rulers are silent key stakeholders in peace building and security within their communities. And this came out clearly from our KII with the Dawn Commission and also with the traditional rulers. One thing that the Amotekun Security Corps has brought to the fore was giving, before now, traditional rulers would say they lack perform certain function and the rest of them. But Amotekun could not be enforced without State House of Assembly legislating to give it the legal backing. And it was as a result of the legal backing that traditional rulers have become board members. They are now on the board of Amotekun. They are involved in the recruitment. They are also an important body in terms of providing advisory and even intelligence from their respective communities, which the Amotekun commandants and also the core members of Amotekun told us have been very critical to the successes that they have recorded. Of course, the excerpts are there, but let me just explaining on their level of involvement in Amotekun. The Orogun of Okela in Osun State said we were involved in the process because of our traditional roles in the community as well as in security matters. We own our territories and closer to the people to protect them in all ramifications. Amotekun is constituted with local hunters, herbalists, among others, because these groups of people, of course, were constituted because the build-up of Amotekun Corps, they were instrumental to this. So they helped in the mobilization of a grassroots resources to ensure respective security within their communities. They also helped in identifying local threats and neutralizing it. They also helped in mobilizing resources. In fact, some of them also conducted security risk assessments in their respective communities, levying community members a certain amount of money so that they identify respective areas where security threats have been noticed, and then ensuring that there is adequate deployment of manpower to safeguard respective domain. Of course, rounding off this presentation, the traditional rulers against, of course, the current argument of not having constitutional powers and the rest of this paper argues that the insecurity has, of course, elevated the status of traditional rulers through this legislative legal backing, which Amotekun now currently enjoys, and which places them as important members on the board. So it means that going forward, and with the importance of regional security framework, of course, being embraced across the country, particularly in the southern part of the country, in no distant future, more powers would be, more constitutional responsibilities, of course, will be given, is projected to be given to traditional rulers. And then, of course, with their roles in recruitment, appointment, because those that will be members of Amotekun are from respective communities. So these are enhanced security of respective communities, unlike when policemen are recruited and then approval. Letters are to be given by traditional rulers before such individuals get enlisted into the Amotekun Security Corps. And to them, they said this has been very, very helpful in ensuring that only those who can contribute to security of their respective communities get recruited into the Corps. In conclusion, we argue that this security threat elevates traditional rulers into reckoning which constitutional empowerment to engender security of their communities has bestowed on them through the formation of Amotekun security network. In concluding, I would like to acknowledge the generous funding of Gender Henkel's Steve Tong, University of Leiden, for the research. This paper is actually a subset of a bigger investigation into the traditional institutions, Amotekun Corps, and regional security or insecurity in southwestern Nigeria. I would also appreciate, of course, David, for ensuring that we have this panel and then where we can also get feedback on our works. Finally, I thank my colleague, Dr. Faisal Laiton, for roles played in data collection and reviews of drafts of papers from the fieldwork. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Dr. Tade, also to you for a timely and very interesting presentation. Any questions? I see Dr. Garba going in and out. Any questions already?
Yes, it was a nice presentation and it was a good paper. I recommend the effort of the speaker. My only question is, in summary, what is the main proposition of the paper?
Dr. Tade, how would you say?
Yeah, thank you. Essentially, the major argument of the paper is that while we are arguing about the constitutional disempowerment of traditional rulers, their role has actually been elevated, or their importance is now being recognized with security threats. And since security is local, leveraging on the structures which traditional institutions have is already yielding fruits. Apart from that, traditional rulers were, of course, making case for being constitutionally empowered. But this paper is arguing that what the setting up of Amotekun security framework has done is also to give them a role on the Constitution, because Amotekun does not work, it doesn't have status without legislative legal backing, which it currently enjoys. Of course, you know that when it was first set up, it was not allowed to operate until each state's houses of assembly in the southwestern part of the country went back and then legislated upon it to be to have constitutional backing, and that is why they are standing. So through them, you have a constitutional role under security. Before, of course, till date, you still have traditional institutions under the local government administration. But with this, for us, it is a gradual way by which traditional institutions are beginning to get more recognized because of their role in safety in their respective communities.
Yes. Wow, thank you so much. And David, if you don't mind, I have a one last question, please. Thank you. And Doctor, please, one more last question, which I think is very relevant also to my own research in the northern part of the country. What can you experience of the people, especially looking at in the past when traditional rulers or authorities used to be very strong, very relevant? You know, there are a lot of allegations of arbitrariness and a kind of high-handedness. So to what extent, for instance, the law, the Amotekun law now, of I mean, whether it has allayed the fears of people about the behavior of traditional rulers in the past?
Yeah, of course, thank you. There are still fears. Of course, there are still fears, particularly in the early, I think it was early 2020, when these issues of even not only from traditional rulers now specifically, even in the way the operatives of the corps were carrying out their duties. They were new to the system, and so people were raising issues about the training, the kind of training that they have been given. But even on the field, while two or three, I think two of the Amotekun commandants that we spoke with raised issues about issues of local community compromises, yes, and then allegations of traditional rulers' complicities were also raised. And I think the difference between this then was that those who were made members of the board of advisory are vice chairman and the chairman of traditional council of the state, who can also sanction some of these their members. But the good news, what we got from the field was that they have been able, according to the Amotekun people, they have been able to keep those traditional rulers in check. Whatever they have found around them, these to a certain extent have been neutralized. But I think the major thing about that is the long period of absence from sources of funding for local government administrations, and how people were allowed to come into communities where traditional rulers now get their sources of livelihood from trading with community lands and all those ones, without, of course, doing background check on those that such facilities are given to.
Oh, thank you so much. I so much appreciate your response. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Dr. Tade, and thank you, Dr. Gaba, for the good questions. I see we also have attendees, so if they have any questions, please raise them in the chat or raise your hand, or however you can. You're more than welcome, and welcome to the session. Thank you, and I think I will share in the chat I think this is the law. Maybe Dr. Tade can confirm that you're talking about, right? Where the that enshrines and legalizes the Amotekun organization.
Wow, I would love to read this law.
Yeah, so I put it in that's what I thought. I put it in the chat.
Okay.
And maybe Dr. Tade can confirm whether that's the right one.
Excellent.
In the meantime, we can move on. We will stay in southwestern Nigeria for now, and we can go to Dr. Funmilayo Agbaje, who will talk about female traditional institutions in Ekiti society. Dr. Agbaje. Yes.
Thank you very much, sir. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My pleasure to be here. And thank you, Prof. Thank you for the project. And I really appreciate this opportunity. This afternoon, I'll be speaking on female traditional institutions and the travails of conflict management in Ekiti State, Nigeria. I hope you can see the screen because I'm trying to share.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Okay, my presentation outline, we go, in this dimension, introduction, then the problem, research methodology, the research findings, and then conclusions and recommendations. So why this research? I mean, some of the problems prompting my research arose from the fact that globally, contributions of women to conflict management, though had been debated and over time, still has not been given enough focus. And the reason may not be far-fetched in the fact that in most cases, people focus on women as victims of conflict. People focus on social issues such as discrimination, stereotypes, gender-based violence. And in the process of doing that, they tend to forget that there are viable contributions that women, are putting into social issues. I mean, specifically in this case, in managing conflicts, in their society. So also, if you look at the large body of literature existing on African women and their contributions to peace and security, you will notice that in most of it, it's as if the efficacy of female traditional authorities are missing. Sometimes you talk about females in peacekeeping, you talk about females in peace building projects, and then you focus more on the elites at the United Nations, level, AU level, ECOWAS level, how to bring in the non-governmental organizations without thinking of the bottom-up approach, to dealing with this by focusing on the community where you have traditional authorities. And when you do, you tend to forget that there are women traditional institutions too, because in most cases you focus on the Oba and the chiefs and then the likes without paying attention to some of the institutions. And I call them institutions because these are age-long groups. They have been indebted into the society. They are part of the society. They constituted the same authority in most cases as Oba and then the chiefs, especially in the Ekiti community. So against this background, the study examines the roles of female traditional institutions in conflict management, and then using historical perspective, that is the pre-colonial, the colonial, and then post-colonial, and then what is obtainable, at the moment. The study tries to reflect what Ekiti society looks like, because though it's among the Yoruba of southwestern Nigeria, there are peculiarity to the people, in that part of the country in terms of their tradition and their cultural values and their general ways of life. So I will give a brief historical background and geographical background of Ekiti. I said that the people are formed from the largest ethnic group, which of course is Yoruba land, and then they are culturally homogeneous. So in the state, though they are speaking a dialectical as part of Yoruba, they still have similarities in terms of what they speak. You understand each other. If an Akoko man speak, Ekiti person may not understand, and it's also part of Yoruba. If an Ijebu person speak, it's possible for an Ekiti. But in terms of this Ekiti state, they are homogeneous in terms of their language and culture. They have similarities, and then presently Ekiti state has 16 local governments, as Ado Ekiti is the capital of the state. And then if you go by the 2006 population census, it has a population of about 2,398,954. So the choice of this part of the country is based on the rich history of women's involvement, not only in conflict management, across all spheres of life, because this is an area whereby you find women becoming king in the past, women becoming the head of household in the past, women taking up agricultural, occupation without even blinking, because the men and the differences between the men and the women are not so pronounced. The bottom line that someone is doing it. So they don't place such emphasis. It depends. If you are the first child in the family and you happen to be a female, you are expected to function like a male in the same family. So such are the traditions that are there in the Ekiti that makes them different from the other parts of the of Yoruba land. And then some of the salient issues addressed during the course of these studies are: one, we looked into the traditional activities of women, because now that we are westernized, we find out that a lot of these activities might have dwindled, but they are there. They are not as efficient as they used to be. We observe the traditional status of women. Are they still the same? Do they still partake? Do they still have such authority? Because when it comes to managing conflict, you have to have some level of authority. Just like Dr. was talking about Amotekun, you have to have something that gives you power. Then people will respect you and then they listen to you. Then we look at the changes that had occurred in that society over the years, and then the continuity. Are there things that used to be and then they are still continued? And then the struggle to be in the front line. Of course, this is a global problem. Find women now trying to do things for themselves. Women are becoming more aware, giving rise to feminism and all sorts of groups that are gender-based. So with that in our mind, we went to the field and then we decided to use this research methodology. And the study is qualitative, and exploratory research design was utilize. We use observation. We listen to oratory, oral history from elderly ones. We attempted some case studies across the ages in the past 10 years, 100 years ago. We use archival material. There were focus group discussions, key informant interview, in-depth interview guides. And also, we sampled using homogeneous purposive sampling method to select 2 communities from each senatorial district in Ekiti State. Presently, there are 3 senatorial districts in Ekiti State. So we decided that, okay, they speak the same language, they are likely to have similar culture. In order for us not to be too overwhelmed, we decided to go this way by choosing 1 urban or peri-urban in some cases, and then 1 outright rural area from each senatorial district. So in total, the study engages a total of 6 communities, for this research. And then a total of 83 study participants were involved in the collection of data, out of which we have 77 women and then 6 men. And then men were included for us to be able to harvest, some of their opinion on this issue, especially the kings, because we want to try and then weigh in on bias or just women, opinion on this. And at times you find out that women tells you, oh, we did this with the Amotekun, we did this with the Hobbers, we did this, we're the one behind some of the instances of these sources that were recorded in so occasion. So in order for us to find out if it were so, we had to speak with some stakeholders. And then in this case, we had 6 men. So then we focus on women, particularly in the markets, in the palace, in the traditional council, that is the female chiefs. In the shrines, they have religious, like a core occult, like church, like what we have. But in this case, traditional shrine, you have mothers and their wives. But we try to streamline our participants to those people who have been involved one way or the other in the management of conflict in their community. So we also utilize primary and secondary sources as our data. And then we, with the help of 2 research assistants, we collected data and then we content analyzed using thematic narration, styles. Let me go straight to the findings. We discovered that there are causes of conflicts because we may not be talking about conflict management without finding out what are those things that you think are causing conflict, or are being causing conflict in this community. Though we came up with several causes, some in the process of, we realized that, okay, maybe these are too trivial or something, that we removed it and then we focus on the ones that are concerned with the society, at large. Then the first one is the unfair resource distribution. They talked about resource distribution in terms of one local government against the other, or even within a local government, a town stands to benefit maybe politically or economically, and the others, and then the women take it upon themselves to see that, okay, this is causing conflict among the politicians, it's causing conflict among the people, and then they step in as mothers to resolve conflict. Then there are social and political injustice. Under this, that is where you have rigging during elections. Farmer headers conflict is under this social and political injustice. And there are others such as street fighting. And you find out that under these 2, women were not found wanting. We discovered that there are religious clashes from the traditional worshippers to the Christian, from Christian to the Islamic worship. So you find out that there are also religious, clashes. So these are the 3 main causes of conflict discovered, under which you can bring out some other forms of, conflict, such as domestic, gender-based violence, and all of that. They are all under this. So when you sum them up, you may want to categorize them under one of these 3. So The study discovered that there are traditional female institutions in conflict management because at times, when popular belief about women intervening, in conflict, usually because women, they just form a group, maybe a Christian group or community group, and then they come together. And so people easily attribute them to singing, dancing, or doing all sorts of. But this study discovered that there are actual female institutions recognized among the people of Ekiti, and that these institutions operate in hierarchies. They have hierarchical, levels when it comes to their operation. They are structured, they are well structured, and people pay attention and high respect to that. So I present that the first, I think the first in the hierarchy are the palace tribunal. Under this, you have the king's wife, you have the mother of the king, you have the wives of the past kings, and then you have the daughters, the princesses in that palace. They all belong, to this palace tribunal, and they wield a high level of authority when it comes to managing conflict. Then there is a general tribunal where you find people from the markets, religious sector, quarters, that is the street, and then the domestic, tribunals, including even the palace, they all come under this to reflect on issues bordering on peace and security in that community, and they provide solution. So you have market tribunal, you have religious, you have quarters tribunal, and then you have domestic. Though there are hierarchies, yes, but they work interdependently, of each other. One cannot just solely do anything. So whatever decision you arrive at domestic level, you take it to the quarter level. Whatever happens at quarter level, you want to take it to the general tribunal for validation. And so before you can say, okay, I've been able to do this justifiably. So they have hierarchies through which they operate. Also, the study find out that there are qualities that distinguish traditional Ekiti women in conflict management, such as good listening and communication skills. You are expected to have some virtues such as that. You are expected to be willing and flexible, because to be able to have peace in a particular society, there should be a sense of giving and taking. So they don't encourage rigidity as such that is mostly found among some of the traditional institutions beside the female traditional. In fact, it is recorded that sometimes when there are cases, conflicts that are between two communities, and then they are taking a very rigid position against each other, that the women will come up with songs. They come up with historical songs to remind them how that happened in the past and the aftermath of that, in order for them to see reason in giving and taking. Then there must be experience in problem solving, and then they care for real people above abstract principle, unlike what we have in most of the Western model of conflict resolution, where you just, the principle is that this, that, and that. No, they deal with each conflict based on the experience of the belligerent, based on what is at hand. So there is no sacrosanct rules. There are no rigid rules that, okay, this is how it should be done. Some cases we warrant negotiation, some we warrant just dialogue, while some may entail rituals. And then in some extreme cases, they give out punishment, to the parties, in conflict. So in doing all of this, the study discovered that they also have methods of managing conflict. So some of their methods are not different from some of the methods that are being used, in the present dispensation, except that the technique they use, are a little bit, different. So we have adjudication. Yes, they preside. For instance, a regent who also acts like an harbor, during interregnum, had the ability to make judgment and say, okay, this is my judgment and it must be respected. they use negotiation, they mediate. Like I said earlier, they prefer sanction. And then protest is also some of the method that they use. They use songs, they use drums, and they use rituals. And the symbolism cannot be overemphasized, because the people respect culture, they respect this song, they respect this drum. They know that once this drum comes out, it has a meaning and people revere, they fear what the aftermath may be. And then so also the protests and the rituals. So, but for the techniques, I try to recall they use Oshuba, which is a symbol of agreement between parties in conflict. They use bodily inscription, even though this is fading away due to modernity. People are not really doing this, but it was there in the past. Bedtime dish was there in the past. Praise song is still there. They are still using it. It's still working. They plead. They plead.
Dr. Abaji, can I just flag the time? Maybe 1 or 2 more minutes, otherwise we're running.
Okay. So these are some of the things that they use, and if you look at them, they all fall under some of the method that we have. And then these ones are the punitive measures. They are the punitive measures that they use to resolve conflict. And then also there are processions, and these are the forms of processions that we discovered during this. Then there are principles of engagement: fairness, honesty, sustaining the relationship, spirituality, mutual benefit. So they are faced with a number of challenges during their bid for peacemaking. You find out that they are still faced with discrimination and marginalization. There is a lack of political strength. There is inadequate funding. They have patriarchal influence still bothering them. And then they sometimes, because they need to marry the traditional ways of doing things with the modern ways of doing things, they are faced with inadequate exposure to modern skills and trainings in order for them to be able to do this, very well. And then at times you find out that there are even lack of cooperation among women themselves, in making peace. So in essence, this study had been able to establish the fact that these women, they have a dual sex system, which allow for substantial female representation and involvement in conflict management. But the problem is because our culture values are dwindling, our cultural values are becoming reduced. And in that case, it's also affecting the level of peace and security enjoyed by the people in the community. So this study reveals that if women's peace activism and agencies are given the same recognition that they were given in the past, they will be able to complement any of the male-dominated traditional attempts in making peace, in the community. So these women seem not to place themselves in a dichotomous relationship with men. Rather, they seek a very fluid, dynamic relationship with their male counterpart. So we recommend a set, of ideas for this to be able to come to fruition. The first is that women participation in conflict reconstruction should identify some of these non-violent ways of managing conflict that had been postulated earlier. It should include women who are not necessarily Christians or Muslims or succumbing to any of the Western ideologies. Also, there's a need to encourage traditional institutions to contribute more to the development of the society. So in that case, we are bringing United Nations, we are bringing ECOWAS, we are bringing AU, we are bringing any of these international organizations. They must adapt or supplement whatever solutions they are bringing in to complement local peacemaking initiative. Also, there's a need for more research into the diverse contributions of women, in conflict and management. And lastly, it is also recommended that peacemaking rituals, because there are rituals, and some of the rituals that I mentioned earlier were used by even the male traditional leaders, including the traditional security architecture, such as Amotekun. They also employ some of these rituals in whatever they are doing. So they should be adapted into the modern ways of resolving conflict. The bad aspects, such as ritual killings and bloodshedding, may be removed, but there are good aspects that should be reinvented as Africans for us to be able to contribute, to conflict management. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doctor. We don't have a lot of time, but if somebody has a quick question, then of course you're very welcome to
Yes,
ask.
David, just to first of all commend our Iron Lady in the meeting. Yes, and Dr. Fumel, I want to be gender sensitive now. My interest is the number of men used in this research to get their perspective of women. Why are they 6, not 10 or 20 out of the number? Or are you being gender sensitive also? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. Thank you for the question. I actually, when we got to the field, we highlighted, in fact, over 20 men, to speak, too. But unfortunately, the time, you understand the way we carried out this research, we couldn't assess some of them. Some will even give us appointments only for us to get there, and then we wait and wait and wait, and then they have other things, engaging them. That was why eventually we came down to 6. And of course, this is ongoing. Maybe we can still do something about the numbers of men involved in the research. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
so much.
Yeah,
you.
of course. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Again, thank you very much for a wonderful presentation and a wonderful paper. A lot of details, a lot of depth in the analysis. Great examples. Thank you very much. Then we move on to Dr. Shitu from the University of Lagos.
Yeah. And David, please, I have a request.
Yeah.
During my session, I will be happy if you can help me share my PowerPoint, please.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Okay, can Dr. Fumi please unshare?
Yeah.
Dr. Fumi, can you please unshare?
Yeah. Right. Is Dr. Fumi there? Fumi Lion?
Dr. Fumi, can you please unshare? Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Yeah.
Okay. I'm coming, please. Just few minutes. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. We can see it. And the same for you. 15 minutes, please.
All right. Thank you very much. The title of my paper is The Traditional Authority System, Inclusive Public Participation and Grassroots Peace Building Mechanisms in Lagos. The motivation for this study actually came from an initial study which was conducted to ascertain the extent of public participation in a particular community called Makoko in Lagos State. And during the course of that study, we realized that, yes, the traditional chiefs play a critical role in the public participation, but in terms of peace building among themselves, there was an issue. In fact, in that very study, we realized that all of these chiefs were not relating with one another in their bid to claim superiority. So we decided to extend this study to cover more areas in Lagos State in order to be able to ascertain, one, if indeed traditional authority system plays a critical role in promoting inclusive public participation at the grassroots, and what peace-building mechanisms do they employ in the case of conflicts? So the objective of this study is divided into two, which is first, how does traditional authority system foster public participation at the grassroots across Lagos? And two, are there similarities and differences in the peace-building mechanisms employed by the Obas and chiefs across the Lagos State? And the study area, of course, is Lagos State. We initially thought of using these 5 divisions: Badagry, Ikeja, Ikorodu, Lagos, and Epe. But it turned out that as the study continued, we were unable to get to Badagry. We were unable to also get to Ikeja, even though it's central. So we had responses from 2 Obas from Ikorodu region. We were able to meet with 5 chiefs in Epe and 1 of the Obas in Lagos mainland. So the research methodology which we use for this study is a mixed method research. In other words, we conducted both quantitative research analysis as well as qualitative analysis of data. And as you can see, this presents a summary of the sample characteristics of our samples across all the regions in terms of our survey instrument distribution. So we were able to cover all the 5 regions while distributing our survey. But for the purpose of the qualitative study, Ikeja as well as Badagry were not included. And the study actually looked at the determinants of inclusive public participation. So as you can see from the model, we have traditional leaders as one predictor, influence of decision makers as another, responsiveness of grassroots politicians, performance of grassroots leaders, performance of the traditional leaders themselves, access to information, attending meetings, and peace-building mechanisms. We also include some of the social income variables. We also included education as a variable. Interestingly, when we tested for all the assumptions regarding the dependent variable, it turned out that it violated the assumption of normality. Hence, we resorted to using binary logistic regression. And as you can see from the screen, variables are significant. That is, the influence of the traditional leaders appears to be a significant predictor. The performance of grassroots leaders is significant. Peace-building mechanisms is significant. Education is also significant. And as you can see from the odds ratio, what this implies is that given the influence of the traditional leaders, the odds of increased participation will be 3.455. And given the performance of leaders at the grassroots, those are the elected leaders at the grassroots, participation is 2.66. And given the efficacies of their peace-building mechanisms, the odds of increased participation is 25.209. What this implies is that irrespective of what happens at the grassroots, peace-building mechanisms is very, very important. And so one other thing we tried to do in this study, we included in the survey instrument the question, what is peace? We wanted to know what is germane to people when we say that word, peace. And you could see from all the analysis we did, overall, safety of life tops the list. In other words, majority of all our respondents define peace as safety of life. Next is rest of mind. Some says living with fear, safe environment, and living in agreement. But if you look through in terms of comparative analysis, you could see that there is a variance in the perception of peace between perceive peace as rest of mind, the female perceive peace as safety of life. In terms of age category as well, you could see that for all the young people in our sample, there is just a similarity between the young and old. They both perceive peace as safety of life. But when you look at young male and female, there are differences. Above all, you could see that peace is important and it symbolizes safety of life. So what is our summary of finding? We found that based on our regression that traditional authority system, performance of elected officials at the grassroots, and peace building mechanisms are significant predictors which increase the odds of inclusive public participation at the grassroots. And if we dissect it, you could see that in terms of the significance of these traditional authorities system, they wield more influence in terms of land allocation, in terms of dispute resolution, as well as a peaceful coexistence. So in terms of governance, yes, they are relevant, but they had some limitations. In terms of mobilization, yes, people say they are relevant, but they have some limitation. The worst of all is in terms of the people's perception of the role of these traditional leaders with respect to local development. Many of our respondents have the notion that the traditional system do not really have influence when it comes to local economic development. Another important findings is that the performance of the elected leaders have significant effect with respect to the three categories. We actually look at the elected leaders into three categories. We have the elected local government chairman, we have the elected councillors, and in Lagos, we have what we call the local community development associations, and they also have their chairman elected as well. And if you can see, the performance of the LCDA chairman seems to be more relative to the performance of the local government chairman. Is that among all our respondents, they seems to relate more with the LCDA chairman. In fact, some claim they don't even know who their local government chairman is, because many of these LCDAs subsist under the local government administration. But this is rather peculiar with Lagos State anyway. Yes, the final one is the peace building mechanisms, which we also tried to look at, and we dissected this into 5 areas: community solidarity. We also have dialogue, as well as consistency in meeting, that is having peaceful meetings among the members. And as you can see, that of in terms, facilitation of dialogue seems to there seems to be a greater percentage of agreement that the peace building mechanisms in their various localities facilitates more of dialogue. And what are the contributions to knowledge? We identified 3 important contributions to knowledge in this study. One, this study reinforces the significance of traditional authority system in our democratic settings, not only in Nigeria, but across Africa. We also operationalized peace building mechanisms and identified 4 common mechanisms, that is promoting community solidarity, discouraging hate-based mobilization, fostering progressive dialogue, deepening moral suasion. And we also discovered that there is a desire to recognize the traditional authority system as the 4th tier of government. Recommendations. We recommended that state and across the Federation deserve a constitutional recognition. Perhaps they can be given the official title of the fourth tier of government. We also recommended that local governance across Lagos State should be accorded independence. Of course, we realize that the local government autonomy bill has been signed. So in this study, we recommended that this local government independence should be enhanced. And finally, we recommended that traditional leaders need to reignite their role as development agents and reconsider other channels necessary for community solidarity towards matters of local economic development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shitu. Dr. Agbaje has a hand up. Please.
What?
Dr. Agbaje Dr. Funmi has a hand up for a question already.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I just want to ask a question because for me, Makoko is just a settlement, just like Lagos. I mean, maybe it's no mass land. People just go there, they settle down, and then you find out that if you are from the north, you have your leader. From the east, you have your leader, the Yorubas, the Egun, and then you all have your leaders there at Makoko. So I want to ask, is there any recognized traditional institution, be it king or chief, in that area of Lagos State?
Yes, there are. In fact, outside of this study, that was what we did as far back as 2016. We met 6 recognized chiefs. They have at least 6 recognized chiefs in that area that is recognized by Lagos State government.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Garba had a question, yes. I think, also.
Yes, no, it's just to commend the presenter, at least for the well and rich research they have done. And this is an important contribution to the larger research that we are doing on traditional authorities in Nigeria. So that is just a commendation about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I was also wondering if you could say a little bit more. So I think in most of these graphs and tables, the dependent variable is inclusive public participation, if I'm not mistaken, right? And so I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more about what that means and why that's such an important thing to look at.
Thank you very much. There is this argument that only the elites or people at the grassroots really don't bother about governance issues, especially given the fact that they have this erroneous belief that they have been marginalized. Some feel that they are neglected. So this concept of public participation, first of all, is people's willingness to participate in matters of governance and administration within their locality. But we needed to look at it from an inclusive point of view, taking into consideration that we want to get to the bottom and ensure that, yes, it is not just people living in towns only that really participate. People also living in the inner suburb are also participating in matters of public administration. And that's why we had to coin it as an inclusive public participation.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, then we can move on to Dr. Garba, who will talk to us about Katagumen Miso Emirate Councils. Thank you very much, Dr.
Okay. I've solicited for your help to share it.
Yeah, I'm sharing. So you can start talking. I will share in a minute, I'm sure.
Okay, yes. So thank you so much for this opportunity to at least talk about my paper on the changing role of traditional authorities in conflict, security, and peace building in Katagum and Misau Emirate Councils in Bauchi State. So looking at, let's move to the next slide. Next slide, please. Okay. Now I have started by looking at the reasons that inform the choice of this this topic. Katagum and Misau Emirates are two emirates in Bauchi State, which is a state in the northeastern part of Nigeria. And there are 6 emirates altogether in the state, but I have chosen these two because of 3 reasons. Number one, they have a history of working together to enhance security in the past. And the larger part of my paper also contains a point that says Misau was part of Katagum Emirates until 1917. And 2 events, of course, happened in the 2 emirates, one more recently and the other one in the past. What happened established a kind of mutual relationship between the emirates and their people. In Misau, for instance, it was, the government of Bauchi State suspended the emir as a result of farmer-herders clash, which the government, people and of course the government alleged that the emirates contributed because of arbitrariness, because of greed, and of course many other reasons. Even establish a commission of inquiry to establish that. So there has been a kind of mutual distrust between the emirates and the people. But in the local government closer to it, that is Katagum, the story is different. That one has, is about mutual trust between the people and the emirate, such that the emir once instructed the people to defend the emirates against bandits and terrorists, and they responded positively. And since then, they stopped experiencing these unnecessary attacks. So these are the reasons that inform the choice of this topic. Now, traditional authorities in my paper simply means local or traditional leaders in northern Nigeria before the colonial administrators came. And so that is what traditional authorities here means. And in the local, word used for traditional authorities, of course, is the emirate, while the traditional leader is called an emir. Then changing roles of traditional authorities here simply means looking at their roles before independence, before colonialists came, during colonialism, and of course, in post-independence periods, especially with focus on conflict, security, and peace building in the Emirates under study. Next slide, please. Next, yes. So I have looked at the nature of debates among scholars about traditional authorities, not just in generally in northern Nigeria, at least what the state of literature is. There are people, of course, among scholars who are always in support of the relevance of traditional authorities, relying on various reasons. These are people that have argued in support of the relevance of traditional authorities and the need to include them in governance. Some relied, on a reason that says they are the grassroots leaders, they are loved by their people. Some relied on their influence and how connected and their connection to the people. And, also another point that they have never been overlooked by any administration in the country. Next slide. And some other even colonial administrators, emphasize that for governance to succeed in Nigeria, then traditional authorities must be involved because they said they help in providing security, and that is in their domain. And there are, of course, scholars who oppose the institution up to date, and they look at their main reason is they are not relevant. And they also rely on many reasons. The first reason is they look at them as stumbling block to social change and progress. That's some scholars. And some look at them as psychopaths who have elevated psychopathy into a royal art, meaning they look at them as people who have compromised, themselves just for their own benefit and at the expense of their people. Next slide, please. Next. And then there are, of course, scholars in the middle. And I have realized or come across these views of the middle class scholars from the report of political view on, of course, the traditional institutions of 1987. And generally, the literature, the dominant approach have been historical, relying largely on secondary literature. So I must say that the larger research that we are doing seems to be the first, at least, to examine traditional authorities from different perspectives, empirical research, the historical mixed method, and many other things. So this is an important contribution to the literature. Next slide, please. Now, what is my argument? Now, the simple thesis or proposition that I try to establish in this research is simply to say that the roles of traditional authorities in the Emirates under study in conflict, security, and peace building have changed from relevance to irrelevance because of reforms beginning from colonial times in Nigeria. Next slide, please. So this is the thesis, and what this thesis is simply, saying is historically, history has shown that traditional authorities in northern Nigeria, and in particular the Emirates under study, they were relevant, they were very powerful, they were in charge, and they were close to the people. But during colonialism, this power, this relevance started, going down, even though they were meant to be in charge, but this time around under another person or a colonialist who is placed above them. And post-independence, events shows how this relevance, disappeared gradually, and we got to a stage where they are no longer relevant. They are only, relevant when the government wants them to be relevant. So they know they are no longer in control, they are no longer in charge. They on their own assert their relevance in their various domains. So that is what the situation is now. So considering the nature of the debates and the dominant approach adopted by scholars in the study of traditional institutions, my research, excellent. So the research questions here, number one, how have the roles of traditional authorities in the Emirates under study changed over the years in conflict, security, and peace building? And how have the traditional authorities worked to promote sense of awareness among the heterogeneous people they are ruling? And what cultural mechanisms have they used to build bridges across time, manage conflicts and security challenges in their domains? And how relevant are the mechanisms in addressing current security challenges? So in other words, the objective of this research is to understand the role of these traditional authorities in the Emirates under study in conflict, security, and peace building over the years, and also to understand how these traditional authorities worked to promote sense of awareness among their people, and also to understand the cultural mechanisms they used to build bridges across time, manage conflict and security, and finally, to understand the relevance of the mechanisms they adopted in addressing current security challenges, not just in the area, but in the larger part of Nigeria. Next slide, please. So the method, of course, is purely qualitative approach. We use primary sources which comprise the administration of questionnaires across the two Emirates, So we used 2 emirates and we selected, districts, 2 districts from each of the emirates, Katagum and this. And in terms of distance, Katagum and Misau are about 15 to 20 kilometers distance, and we use a cluster sampling method to that is for our data collection. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yes. So this is the the data collection side. We use cluster sampling out of the district under Misau Emirates. We use Hardawa districts, Misau and Hardawa, and from Katagum, we use Udubo and Azare districts were chosen. And then we said the subpopulation represented by each cluster, which is known, was used as the basis for proportional selection of samples. And in the sampling, Katagum and Misau Emirates, 4 districts, that is 2 from each, I have said this. And then finally, in-depth interviews with key respondents using open-ended question was also adopted in our data collection. Yes, next slide, please, because of time. Now, of course, we use secondary sources also to support our thesis. And the data collection process was done through first contact and familiarization, and then proper interview. And then 2 research assistants were also used, help also in the collection of data. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yes, findings. Now, in the various responses, the first thing that we have confirmed is that in the past, emirs used to have full control in their emirates, that is in their domains. And then in terms of their relevance, in terms of security, they check the influx of strangers. And then through, what we call Masa Angwani, in English, we call them watheads. And when a stranger visits a town, he has to report himself first to these watheads, and then they will report to the district head, and then to the emir that so-so and so-so stranger is in town, and he has come to say hello to us so that we acknowledge his presence. And then there is a book that they use. That is, this book is called let me see, where's the name of the book? I can't see it here. Sorry, the next slide, please.
Mahada, I think.
Exactly. So this book is very important because in the past they use it to collect information about strangers, even information about lepers, information about people having events like marriages and other stuff like that. So this is a book that they use to record valuable information about the emirate and then subsequently submit to the emir. And this helped the emir in governing his domain. Next slide, please. Yes, and then traditional authorities, of course, we said they provide security, like they use, through their own, like the Sarkin Dawaki, which is the chief security in the emirate, for instance, in the Emirates. So they use him to get, to get rid of Mgunda, that is bandits or terrorists, in the local language. And all our respondents have, according to respondents, all these have changed now, and emirs can now be enthroned and dethroned at will by government. And then we have seen this in the, in the larger part of the paper. Even local government council chairmen are now above them in rank. But of course, respondents all are unanimous that they are still relevant, and especially government still pass policy information to the grassroots through them. And on security and peace building, we said they are still relevant. Officers like Maidala, which is in Hausa, Sarkin Kaswa, who is in charge of the markets, then Delma, and Sarkin Fulani, who is in charge of the herders generally, and herders report to him and they listen to him. So they used to have people like that who reports to the area, and many matters of others. We have Sarkin Daji, who is in charge of the forest, Sarkin Power in charge of the abattoirs, and then Sarkin Baka, Maitafari, and Sarkin Ruwa. So these are all officers that work under the Emirates to check a lot of things and to ensure peace and security in those days. But all these things we said have all disappeared. And now presently, even though they are no longer, powerful like before, but they are still made members of the Security Advisory Committee in their local domains by the local government chairman and other stuff like that. Next slide, please. Conclusion. So in conclusion, what we are simply trying to establish is to show that traditional institutions were relevant and powerful before, but gradually these disappeared. But current realities have shown that they are relevant and that they are needed, at least to address the security situation in the country, or let me say in the north, and in the areas under study. But and we have seen the main reason is reforms, local government reforms, the various local government reforms. We have seen that it is through these reforms that their relevance disappeared. And another thing that we are saying in the conclusion is possibly what we are experiencing in security this time around is the insidious effect of the lost in relevance of these traditional institutions. So go to recommendation, please. Next slide, the last slide. Recommendation. So we are saying that their role should be reviewed. That is in governance, and to allay the fears of people about their influence, we said there should be a kind of a policy to control or regulate their participation in government, to allay the fears of people about their arbitrariness in the past. So that is what this paper is saying. And thank you so much for listening. And thank you, David, for providing this opportunity for us at least to present our research for feedback from our colleagues. I am really grateful, and I have also learned a lot today, especially from all the papers, because the theses are gradually coming together, and we may end up seeing one day, reintroduction of the traditional institutions fully back in government. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Garba, for your wonderful presentation and for the enthusiasm.
Yeah.
I'm also very grateful for these presentations. I will, as you were talking, I was so interested in all your stories that I decided not to push for time, and will leave out my own presentation
Yes.
about the chiefs.
Yes.
We can do that at a later time.
Yes.
If there are any questions from anybody to Dr. Garba, now is the time to ask. And if not, I want to pick up quickly, and this is more so for us internally maybe than for the conference, but I would really like us to continue this conversation. So hopefully this is not the end. I will try. I'm still trying to organize funding for an actual meeting where we can come together and actually talk together in some way. But this is most certainly happening. So please bear with us as we make this happen and the final papers come in. But we will definitely, if you're interested, continue this conversation. So I hope. Thank you.
Well, I'm interested, and I hope to send you the final draft from this conversation in the next 2 weeks.
Wonderful. I look forward to it.
So much. Yes,
thank you all so very, very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shitu. Thank you for me.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
I will continue to be gender sensitive.
Thank you, Dr. Bade.
Yes, I will continue to be gender sensitive. I will follow.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Have a nice day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.